Evening. I'd like to welcome everyone come to Zichron Churban Europe tonight in the 9 days. We implemented Zichron Churban Europe last year in the Learner Network because we have weekly Chizuk Evenings of different Rabbanim and Mashgichim speaking throughout the year, schmoozing on Thursdays. So we felt it was important to remember in the 9 days the Churban Europe, and we should pass it on for generations to come. So that's how the Zichron Churban Europe came about. We have two Holocaust survivors this evening who came out to share their stories with us. And it's not easy for them to speak. It's not a story of growing up in the country. It's painful. And Rabbi Brisk, the first time last year, he agreed to speak about it because he saw the generations, the new generation coming and the old generation going, and there's not much of the new generation who you hear from the old generation. So he strengthened himself and picked himself up and said, fine, I'm willing to speak. And after last year he spoke for us in Baltimore, he spoke with John Hopkins, and he brought copies. After he spoke, they did research on John Hopkins, and they found papers from him going to the camps, documented surgery. That was for your foot? But I'll tell you his story, and people can see it. We have it blown up over here on the wall. We'll pass it around, and we have other copies. We also have Rabbi Chapnick from Howell, New Jersey. Went through the Buchenwald camp, Gehenna, together with the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Lau, and his older brother, and he's going to share with us his stories for us to remember, for our children to remember. I want to share with you a small story, what I didn't intend to say until I pulled up to the shul here. First of all, I would like to thank Mayor Lieberman for arranging and all the other people who were involved in the shul, giving us the hall, and all the other sponsors, and Ami for helping us set up the screen, and parents for coming under the video, and everyone else, thank you. And I pulled up over here to the driveway. I didn't even know where the shul was exactly. I recall 12 years ago, I used to drive around Lakewood when this neighborhood wasn't really established. I used to like to know who owned which houses and sniff around a bit. And a few houses away from this shul, I remember knocking on the door. And the old lady opened the door, and I asked her name. Does she own the house? Does she want to sell the house? And she tells me she's Jewish. I saw a big cross on the door, and she tells me that her husband's Christian. So I took an interest in her, and I said, forget about trying to buy the property, but like if you're Jewish and your husband's a guy, like why'd you marry him? And she started telling me a story in the Holocaust that that in Europe, she was a young girl and she used to get beaten up in school for being Jewish, and went through the Holocaust, and she was terrified to identify herself as a Jew, so she married a guy. She thought it was security. This is a few houses away from this shul, so I'm sharing this story with you. When I pulled up, I remember that story. There's more to the story, but I'm not here to say my story. At this point, I'd like to introduce Rabbi Yehoshua Brisk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction. Try to briefly. Yehoshua Brisk. I was born in Romania, part of a country called Transylvania, which switched hands between Hungary and Romania. The time I was born, it was Romania. And at the time, the Jewish population, my grandfather was the Rav in the village, about 60 or 100 families. Our village is called Lechnitz, and a couple neighboring villages. The life before the early 40s was pretty much calm. I went to Cheder in the morning. It's about 7 o'clock. There was one rabbi for about 15 to 18 children, starting from Aleph Beis to Gemara. We had to go to public school. There's no Jewish schools. So the public school was 6 days a week. We went to public school 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, back to Cheder. And my grandfather, as the Rav of the village, was very friendly with the director of the school. Arranged that if we go to Shabbos, we can just go for 2 hours, not to carry books, just to sit there and be counted. This went on very well. When I was about 6 years old, my parents moved to a different location in St. Transylvania. It was called Chapnick. My father came a position as a Rav, a Shreifet, Chazan, again traveling between little villages back and forth. So I was there about 2 years. It was not a good cheder for my age. So when older brother and I went back to Lechnitz to our mother's parents, grandparents. In 1941-42, when Hungary joined the Axis, the German forces, they divided Transylvania. Part went to Romania, part went to Hungary. The village where our parents lived, Lunka, was on the border of Hungary and Romania. Jews born there, who were not born there, had to evacuate it, had to leave the place. And my father got a position somewhere deep in Hungary called Székesfehérvár. Older brother and I stayed with our grandparents in Lechnitz. After about 1942, about 43, my bar mitzvah had a big party in Shul, in my grandfather's house. Everybody shall assure us. What they distributed was, instead of a kazayas maitzi and a piece of herring or a piece of fish, everybody got a whole new roll. I said, my shall assure us, and that was it. My parents couldn't come. It was too far to travel. And, in 1944, again, 1943, we had to go 44, things got worse. A lot of Germans moved in there, and there was a group, Hitler Jugend, where they recruited 12-year-olds, 13-year-old boys to train them in the military. And those were very anti-Semitic. Jewish boys had to go to the training too, but we were always beaten up, so we had to go. And that's when the friendly neighbors started to become enemies. I remember when one Chizuk Evening, this Hitler youth group wandered the streets, heard the sicker singing, there threw rocks there. We couldn't finish our meal then, so we had to go inside. It went like from bad to worse. We had to wear Jewish yellow bands, stars, Jewish stars on the jacket, on the hands, armbands, yellow armbands, marked Jew. This was around April 44, they took us to a ghetto. All the neighboring villages went to the big city, it's called Bistritz. They had made a ghetto there. There's about 3,000 people from the area, from that area. The ghetto, we were right after Pesach, so we took some food along with us. Right after Shavuos, after we finished the davening, the Sudas, they gathered together, lined us up into the middle of the plaza, took trucks, called us to the train station on the way to Auschwitz. We picked up the big cattle carts, like big box carts, hosing about 80 to 100 people in there, families together. We did put up some curtains for division. One side of the curtain had some water that we took along. The other side curtain for waste. We traveled 3 days till they got to the, without opening those train doors, the cart doors. We got to a town in Czechoslovakia called Košice. There they opened the doors. They let us get some fresh air, breathe with. Then the Germans took over. The train, Hungarians gave it up, the Germans took over. And on another day or so, we traveled to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, we only had our clothes with us. The Hungarians tried to take away all the valuables. Anyway, so we got to Auschwitz, and people unloading the cars, they were prior prisoners, mostly Polish people who were there from years before. The Polish were interned early in the early 40s, 42, 43. So anyway, I had my children in my hand. I was hiding it. One of the people who unloaded the car saw my children, so he asked me, "Do you speak Yiddish?" So I said, "Yeah." The reason they asked me Yiddish because a lot of Hungarian Jews spoke mostly Hungarian or German, not too much Yiddish. So I told him yes. So he said, "You see up at the head of the line, Mengele. He comes here. He decides people." Older people go one side, the children, able-working people go to the other side. So when you go there, tell them you're 16, you're a Feldarbeiter. I spoke German, so when he asked me that's why I answered in German. I got closer to him, he tapped my arm. And I got to the right side where the workers were. They took us into Auschwitz. Took us into a big barrack with a lot of showers there. Everything, take all our clothes off except the belt and the shoes. I had a tefillin in my shoe. One shoe tefillin, one toyal, one shorosh. After the showers, they took out, they shaved everybody, haircut everybody. And I didn't much to shave, I was only 13. So, and then one of the guards noticed that film and he grabbed it away. So without it, took us into the camps, the area called Birkenau. That's where they had the detention. It was almost like a transitional camp. This camp where we in the group, our group was called Zigeunerlager, a gypsy camp. A lot of gypsies round up at the Germans also. And they got not called out, the guards called out, anything under 18, line up one side. So they took us into 2 barracks, about 800, 900, 1,000 children in a barrack. The sleeping accommodations, we had 3-tier bunks, about maybe 3 meters wide. Each bunk, each line at the bottom, housed about 30 kids. And we sat up, we couldn't go stretch out to sleep, but we just sat on a straw mattress floor. And the life in the barracks was pretty bearable. We survived. Mostly took us out every morning to count. It was called uphell. They lined up in front of the barrack, about 5 deep on the lines. The 2 blocks next to each other, we lined up all the children together. I think about over 1,000, 1,500 children lined up. They counted every morning. After the count was done, a truck went by, carts went by, they brought food. A big ration. It was a nice, dried out, brick-looking bread. They gave us 1 loaf, like a building brick, divided for the 5 in each line. Another cart came along with some liquid, it's supposed to be coffee or tea. I don't know what it tasted like, not like that. Not like the Taster's Choice. After the count, we went into the blocks again. About 2 hours later, we went out in the plaza, walking around, marching, counting, looking back and forth. And about a week or so after we were there, they took our children to out of the camp. We didn't know where we were going. Took us out in the field about a couple of kilometers away, where we cut out sod. And wheelbarrows, filled up wheelbarrows with sod, hauled it to another area in the camp, and planted sod. This went on for about a couple of days. A week later, back out again, picked up the sod, hauled it back to the place we took it from. It kept us busy not to rebel. This was in the evening, we lined up again, counted, brought some evening food, or some type of a soup, which was supposed to be pea soup, potato soup, but mostly we found in it was potato peels. A couple of us kids got together and said, when we're liberated, we're going to make a feast of potato soup peels. And a couple of us who survived, we did that. This was around Tisha B'Av time. The Germans knew exactly when the Jewish holidays were. Around Tisha B'Av time, they made a selection. It's called selecting the young people, the young boys, and took them to the crematorium. Again, big lines with 5 deep. And the Mengele came around with another SS guard. They went by each line, looked at it, go back. Each line pulled out 1 kid. The other line pulled out 2 kids. We had a couple of friends who were religious, like we kept their davening a little bit, so we stuck together. And we lined up, like a tall boy should not be near a short boy. So we lined up symmetrically so they didn't notice a big difference. And that's how the line survived. So that's how we went. They took out at the time about maybe 600-700 kids didn't come back to the barracks. We never saw them again. This went on for about a month or so, maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Before Rosh Hashanah, they made a selection again. Again, they pulled out little kids, set them up in a separate box, and sealed it off. They couldn't get in there. Also then, another short kid and I were hiding in the latrines. And when they were counting at about 30, 40 lines, one of the counted ones ran over to us and said, you better come back because they're counting in the latrine. So we ran out, and when we got there, without us noticing us, we went back to the counted line, but it was counted already. That's how I survived the second selection. In this camp there was a famous Rav Tzvi Schmeisels, the Weizenadayan, who later came to America, opened a yeshiva in Chicago, Cheder. And he kept encouraging us, don't lose faith, keep up, daven whatever you can, say brachas, whatever you can, whatever you remember. One boy remembered Shema, the other one remembered Ashrei, the other one remembered Leinu. We kept keeping alive. This kept the spirit going. And one time, somebody came to our block early in the morning, run quickly to block number 17 or 16, whatever it was. The rabbi has a film there. So a couple of lined up, each got a Shal we had. They put on a film one day. Rosh Hashanah, he got a hold of a chauffeur. He got up early in the morning, and the block that was sealed off, the kids, they were begging him to come blow chauffeur before they take him away. Somehow the eldest of the block, they called the capo, he agreed to let him in with the chauffeur. It was dangerous for him, because if they would caught him, they would probably shoot him right away. And around 5 o'clock in the morning on first day of Rosh Hashanah, we heard the tekios. Not all 100, but we heard some. On the second day, we couldn't get him anymore. He was, I don't know where he disappeared from us. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in between, they took a transport of 250, 260 children, took us out of the camp. We didn't know where we were going. Ended up, they took us into Germany, to a camp called Kaufering, Lager 4. It was a transition camp also. We were there about 4 or 5 days without any good food there. Went to a camp called Kaufering Lager 9, number 9 camp. From there, they took us out on trucks to the German farmers, different areas. We helped the farming, picking the crops, potatoes, sugarcane, corns. This was there about 2-3 weeks, so we had a good food there. The German farmers gave us good food. They cooked special. And actually, one of them were very sympathetic with us. But he said they couldn't help, but we have to do what we have to do. And this went around for about a month or maybe 6 weeks. In November, they liquidated our camp because there was no more work for the farmers. It took us into a camp called Bayern, where the Germans build underground shelters for rockets. What we did is put up telephone wires, put up the heavy poles. About 10, 12 kids carried a pole. One fell down, got a hit in the head, another one. They kept us after us. Another group of kids were digging trenches. The Germans were producing a rocket at the time that would shoot straight to England, but it didn't materialize because the British beat them before that. This was in Kalpire, and then the winters came in. Our blocks were cold. There was no heat. There was a small oven at the end of the block where we were, which the block eldest, the block leader, set around there. And as we go along every day to work, there was snow. I lost my shoe and I couldn't find something to wear, so I put rags around it with newspaper. As we walked, my feet got frostbitten, and it got so bad that I couldn't walk anymore. So they put me into a called a shonen block, a block where immobile people were put in with kids. Again, it was cold in there. We bunked up, 2 kids together, 3 kids together, into the warm blankets to keep warm. All of a sudden one night I felt cold. The kid next to me passed away. And I knew his family. So after the war, after liberated, I told the family when it happened, but I didn't know the exact Yiddish date, but approximately when. This went on till end of December. January, they liquidated this camp. So people in the block, the block Eltester, the leader of the block, was speaking Yiddish also. He said, when you get up, walk, don't crawl. Get somebody to help you to walk. If you don't walk, they're not going to take you. Anyway, so my brother was on one side, another friend on the other side, and we walked out to the train on the way to Dachau. We arrived in Dachau. Again, there were some Dutch soldiers. One of them spoke German, the other, she told us, saw me crawling there. Says, get up straight and walk. Get up straight and walk. So I walked to the truck, it was fine, and unloaded the trucks at the hospital in Dachau. They assigned me to a hospital. I didn't know what it was, away from my brother and other kids who went different areas. It turned out to be that they took me to the hospital. Hospital was very nice, set up. They had a show place for the Red Cross came visiting. So they showed how well they treat the prisoners. They had some American soldier prisoners also, so they had to show how nice they were. On January 11th, I had surgery. Without my knowledge, they took me to this operating room. I amputated the toes and forefinger on both feet. I didn't know for 3 days what happened, but to change the bandages, I was screaming a lot because there was no suturing, no anesthesia. So this went on for about a week or 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, somebody saw my brother in a different area hospital. They brought him in. We sat next to each other in the hospital beds. Hospital was treated us very well. They changed linens every other day. They had good food as a showplace for the Red Cross. And this was around, a brother knew when Pesach was. So they were serving the rations. We didn't want to eat the bread. So we put it aside on the bed. Figured maybe after Pesach we'll eat it or not eat it. So we talking whether we should eat it or not, because chametz over al Pesach, we can't eat that. But we didn't have a problem because the bread disappeared. So we just got some soups and one time when they changed my bandages, they got so weak, I was screaming so loud, I needed blood transfusion. Took 2 prisoners from the soldiers, fed them well, and I got 2 transfusions of blood while I was in there. And as I got better, I couldn't walk. I just was sliding around. And April 29th, which was design year, we were liberated by the American Army. I think it was the 7th Tank Division. The story went on that a Jewish group tank leader went ahead of the general force, came into Dachau. Because the Dachau was rigged, the hospital was rigged to be blown up as soon as the Americans arrived. But the doctor in charge was an SS man who knew the future would be before him, so he didn't blow up the hospital. And the soldiers came in. I was very weak, I couldn't walk. So they transferred me to a hospital with the army. Army had a hospital set up. There, they fed me to recoup a grain. Every day got some Ovaltine, some good food. And as I started getting up, I asked the doctor to give me some crutches so I can walk. The doctor says, no crutches. If you take crutches now, you'll never walk. And I didn't take the crutches. They didn't give them to me. I still wanted them. Later that year, in June, July, I was transferred to a DP camp hospital in Feldafing. And at Feldafing at the time, the Gluzmager Rebbe was there, also one of the prisoners. And he had arranged to have a kosher food for the area, for the people. A kosher kitchen was set up, but the Midrashim, he asked to join, supplied Gemaras from the group of Rabbonim who were helping refugees. I forgot the name of it. They sent Sidurim, Mazarim, and I was still in the hospital, so somebody brought me some kosher food in the hospital. For Rosh Hashanah, they set up a temporary shul, and they were davening there, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, an American soldier walks in, he wants to daven for Yom Kippur, Lieutenant Silber, his name. He sat down at the end of the shul, took off his shoes, and when the Rebbe walked in, he saw him, he stepped back, he said, you're an army, an American soldier, you're representing the government, put your shoes on. He didn't want to do it. He said, my parents are in Williamsburg and I'm Shomer Shabbos and Yom Kippur, I want to wear shoes. The Rebbe came back to him and said, put your shoes on. He did put the shoes on. Within a half hour or so, or an hour, General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower was the Supreme Commander, Allied Forces at the time, came to the camp to visit the camps. A group, the Rebbe ahead of it, went out to greet him with bread and wine, like the Torah says, lechem v'yayin. So he was very amazed by the greeting. He asked the Rabbi, what can we do for you? The Rabbi said, it's a kosher food we need, and we need supplies for Sukkot, so Yom Tov coming up. And the Abba Binu are only available in Italy. So he said his adjutant, General Patton, was with him. He said, dispatch a plane to the Italian city, the army there, get the supplies that the rabbi needs. And thanked him for that. General Eisenhower said, you should give him a bracha, give him a blessing. Rabbi, give me a blessing. The Lieutenant Silver interpreted. Now you see how he would look without shoes on. So that's how they told him, the Rebbe told him, you have reached your height and your command now, but you're destined for a higher position to serve the American people in the world. And General Patton also asking for a bracha, but he didn't get such a good bracha. But the lieutenant interpreted him, said, your name will be engraved in Williamsburg. In December, or in November, they got to Bremerhaven. That's the port where ships leave to come to America. And the closing Rebbe was there, and we went also from Prim. It was taking us to Bremerhaven to come here. Then we met the Rebbe again. And how come I was still keeping Yiddish, or davening, or this? I didn't have tefillin then, so we switched one to the other, back and forth. So that's fine. And there was a ship strike. So the ship didn't leave till December 9th. It was an army transport, Marine Marlin. The ship held about 800 people who came to America, different quotas, children, women, children, everything together. And our group was in it, the children's group was there. And in our children's group, we had about 12 kids who kept Shema Shabbos kosher. And the Rebbe had arranged on the ship, there was a Jewish baker, a Greek Jew, who served for the bakery for the ship, for the entire population. He had arranged with him that before he starts baking for the population, he would come down and make special breads for our group. So we had pasistro. And again, we had peanut butter, jelly, sardines, daily. On the ship, it took us 12 days. We arrived in America on the 5th night Hanukkah, December 20th, 46. On the ship was very hot, warm. Again, every morning, kids group tried to sleep in certain vicinity together. The Rebbe woke up one of the boys. He said, "Get up, go through Nagelwasser." The Rebbe came along with each one, got Nagelwasser in the morning. Went davened a little bit, whatever we could by heart. And one night it was very hot underneath in the lower deck. So another boy and I went up on the top deck, took blankets and lied down there. The wind was blowing, it was December, so we covered ourselves. About a couple of hours later, the Rebbe comes out another way, "We're looking for you. What are you doing up here?" I said, "We needed some air." I said, "You foolish kids, you need air. Why are you covering yourself with blankets?" Anyway, so he cared. We arrived, it was Friday, Erev Shabbos. The Rebbe had arranged ahead of time. Our group was taken to the Bronx in a children's home. The Rebbe had arranged ahead of time for people in the Bronx who live near the home to bring kosher food. It was a Rosenberg family, two brothers, Rosenberg, and a Hirschfeld, what was it? Goldhirsch family. There was a shul, the Orthodox shul, Rabbi Tumim was a rabbi there. They brought food Friday evening. The three boys come with leather jackets and caps, and we didn't know about the food arrangement. So they brought challah and fish and chicken, but we don't eat it. You know where it came from. We ate the challah and the fish. We didn't eat the chicken. And in the morning they came back, the boys came back, take us to shul. We went to shul. They said how foolish of us we didn't eat. We didn't know. It's Yiddish mention, Heimish mention, the word and Fayetz Eden and the kosher shul. So we went there. The child, we got some good hot cholent, and 6 months we didn't have. By Sunday morning, the Rebbe had arranged with the UNRWA to release us to the yeshiva. Sunday, Monday, we went back to yeshiva in Williamsburg, South 5th Street, called the Yeshiva Sher Sapleta. The Rebbe had arranged with Yeshiva Tervadas to send twice a week English teachers to teach English. It was good for about a year or 2 years, fine. And we tried to get to night school, but the Rebbe was against it, so we had to push it off for a while. Anyway, later on, I did go to night school and learned some accounting and started to work. This was in 1952, 53. I was in Yeshiva about 6, 7 years, 8 years. And after working for a while, I had to start looking for a shidduch. So, another friend of mine married a girl from Baltimore. So we went to visit. That's how I met the future wife. And after you got married, we lived in Crown Heights for a couple of years. Then we moved to Baltimore. And I was speaking to one of the Goyish groups in Baltimore for first responders. They had to take a class on the Holocaust. I was speaking there, so somebody asked me, how do you feel about revenge? What do you feel? I said, revenge comes from God. My revenge is my family. Every child born is on the come on Hitler. That's our revenge. Just want to make one point. During this Holocaust, the Klosterberg Rebbe got sick. He was lying on the ground. He told his friends around him, when we got to this place, I'm going to build a hospital for Jews. In 1958, they started building a hospital in Netanya, Kiryat Sanz Medical Center. And that was his personal revenge. Every baby born in a hospital was revenge. And then we had set up a group in Baltimore to help raise funds for this hospital. That was my help for the repayment thing. Thank you. Anybody want questions?
Anyone has questions?
Can you tell us any of the other things that you saw in terms of observance of Yiddishkeit in the camps and serious Nefesh that you saw? Any particular other examples that you saw?
The biggest thing was Meisels. He was put together in camp with us as boys. There was also there a Mishkolzer of Gottlieb, who also kept encouraging the boys. When he saw a kid wandering around, he said, "Das ist gedavent, das ist gebroches." So he kept us up, kept us going.
Maybe Shresh should say that with the story with the Zuzha go to the mikveh on Rosh Hashanah.
The Rabbi Meisels was blowing shofar. I had heard the story. He was caught in front of the camp. There was a big water gathering, like a small lake. So he got punished, thrown into the lake. And he came out. He said, "Mashin gewein in the mikveh."
Did you maintain your relation with Rabbanim?
Pardon?
In your years that you were in Baltimore, did you maintain your friendship with the Klosenberg? Or
Yeah. Stay with Rosenberg all the time, yeah.
So we used to go to Williamsburg to.
Once in a while, yeah. And Union City mostly.
There's a book that came out, the Klosenberg Rebbe. I think it's worthwhile to read it. If I want to read that book.
Yes.
Whatever you mentioned tonight is all in the book as well. That's a worthy book to have.
How are you able to keep your mood in the company?
It was grained in from 3 years old on. As I said, my parents, the grandparents, both sides, father and mother, all rabbis, all rabbonim, and famous in Hungary. And that's how we live. we lived the religion, not just,
How many of the people that were interned in the camp who came from a family? Was it large?
very large number, very large number. From our village, there were 2 or 3 people met in camp. I forgot to mention one story. While in camp in Auschwitz, one morning my father came along with the food delivery. He noticed us. He was happy to see our father. For 2 or 3 days, our block got extra rations. Then we didn't see him again. He died later at the labor camp.
When you say Rabbi Meisels, you mean the Weizner?
Yeah,
Did you have a relationship with him after the war?
I met him once or twice. But he was in Chicago. We were, yeah.
What role did he play in the camps?
He was the chief rabbi of the camp.
Yeah.
No official title. He just encouraged kids. He saw kids.
After that?
Huh?
After.
No, in Auschwitz. He saw kids wandering around. He came over. Where you from? What's your name? He knew our grandparents. He knew.
Did you know about the gas chambers when you were there?
We knew, but they made us not to know.
But they were?
They made believe that we don't know, but we knew. And once they took a transfer of kids away, we knew where they were going. At one time, somebody who came to DP camp in Comforting later was there. He saw one truckload went with the kids. They were singing. It was Shabbos, you know, singing. Yeah.
On the way.
On the way.
And you heard that?
I didn't hear it personally, but someone told me you were there. And it's documented. Yeah, the Germans document everything. The pictures they have, tapes they have. So I just read in the Ahmadiyya recently, someone wrote, the German cameras saw the physical things. They didn't see the spirituals. They couldn't take away our spiritual living.
Did you ever travel back?
No. No intention.
Where did you think that people were going to the left? When Mendele sent people to the right to the left, if you didn't know about the gas chambers, where did you think they were going?
We knew they're not going to labor camp. We didn't know exactly at the time the gas chambers, but later we found out, about a month or two later. And they established yahrzeit dates for the villages, the day thereafter Auschwitz.
Any other family members survived it there?
One
Any other family members survived? You mentioned your brother.
uncle, 2 uncles.
Did you keep close to them afterwards?
One,
Keep closer afterwards?
yeah, one was the Krasner Road, where DP came with him. Then he came to Williamsburg. We went there to visit him. Yeah.
How often did new groups come to Auschwitz?
Almost daily. Like between Pesach and Shavuos, mid-July, almost every day groups came.
How did you, as a 12-year-old, pretend you were 16? You couldn't handle your height?
No, I was short, but I spoke fluent German, and my strong telling him, I'm 16 Jahre Feldarbeiter. So he looked and he touched my muscles. And
You approached them on a single line?
single line there I go, yeah.
Can you tell us what you were thinking or feeling while you were standing in front of him?
I was thinking about this Polish Jew told me. You tell him that, you could go to work. And we knew that the others are not going to work. So,
Did you know who he was?
yes.
As Polish Yidden had knowledge that they needed that type of work? The Polish Jew that told you to say,
Yeah.
he knew that they needed that at that time.
He knew, yeah, he knew.
Physically beaten in hospital?
On?
You mentioned the incident in the hospital, your legs.
Yeah.
Were you beaten in outfits on a regular basis?
Did I?
Were you beaten physically?
Once or twice, when I couldn't keep up with carrying the poles. I hit in the head once, still have a mark. And by me being in Dachau, I was luckier than some of the others who had marched. There was a big march from Buchenwald towards other areas, where a lot of people died during that march. Like I say, we have to keep up our faith, follow the footsteps of our parents, grandparents.
Could you give us all a bracha?
I can say, Yimara Hashem Mishalosechem L'Toivo. The reason we say not Kol Mishalosechem, because we don't know what we want. So we say Hashem knows what we want, L'Toivo. We should have it all.